Okay, so what am I doing on the ground? Well, I had to use the blower to blow out all the leaves from the secret garden back here. And the reason for that is because I am looking for something in particular, and that is this right here, the remnants of the caladiums. You see the temperatures are starting to get a little bit cooler around here, so the caladiums have already died back. One thing we want to do before the ground freezes though is we want to collect these bulbs and save them for next year, and that's one thing that I'm going to show you how to do in this video, is how to collect these bulbs and save them for the following years, because these caladiums are actually native to South America and they grow in tropical weather. Here in the States though, you can only grow them in a zone 9 or below, and unfortunately that's only in South Texas and South Florida where you can actually grow these caladiums and actually leave them in the ground over winter. And anything northern than that, you want to go ahead and collect these bulbs because they're not going to survive in those cold temperatures. So today we're going to dig up all these bulbs here, get them out of the ground, and show you how to save them for next year. All right, so I'm starting to collect these. These actually multiplied. I got 2.5 bulbs now when I actually planted 1 bulb. As you can see, when I bought these from Overwinter, they have a little bit of paint to show you which way to plant them up. And that's a good indicator for next year, or this year actually, when you're actually collecting these and you dry them up for next year, is you can repaint that section right there so you know exactly which way it's gonna grow up when you put these back in the ground. Now, here we go, 2.5 bulbs. We're not gonna do anything else to these. We're just gonna leave them as is. We're not even gonna clean off the soil. We're just gonna put them here to the side and just make sure I don't have any more bulbs in here. I think that was pretty much it. We got some other spots that we're gonna look, but these caladium bulbs are actually some of the most beautiful caladiums that I've grown here. Me and Angie have grown a couple of different caladiums over the past 3 years. And these this year are absolutely amazing. And the reason I love caladiums is because they come in all sorts of colors. Some red, some green. Even the white ones are absolutely beautiful. We're gonna go check on Angie because she's actually pulling the ones out of the containers as well. We'll talk a little bit about all the different kind of caladiums, and then we'll go into the process of what we're gonna do to have these stored for next year. All right, so I normally don't make it a habit of laying on the ground, but the only reason I'm doing that is because I have this awesome apron here that I got from Farmers Defense. They sent this out to us, and if you haven't seen any of their products, they also sent us some awesome protective sleeves that I use whenever I'm dealing with the hydrangeas, because unlike most other people, I get a really bad reaction to the hydrangea leaves. My arms start to rash up a little bit, so those sleeves have been a lifesaver whenever it comes to working with hydrangeas. Even rose pruning, I know they still get through there, but it protects you from the minimal scratches and, you know, just moving around the garden, behind shrubs, behind bushes, whatever the case is. And again, this apron is pretty awesome. Can put some of my tools in here. It's got a couple different pockets, 1, 2, 3, 4, a couple little slits for maybe some pencils or some pruners as well. It's an awesome apron. Highly suggest you go check them out. You can see them on Instagram as well, but it's pretty good products. Angie's wearing hers as well. But again, let's go check out what Angie's doing in the containers because she's pulling out those caladiums from there. All right, and here's Angie collecting the ones from the containers there.
Here we go. So that's a great thing about caladiums as well. When you plant them in, especially planting them by bulb. That's what we did this year. We went ahead and planted these beauties inside other containers, squeezed them in with other plants, but in bulb. So that means, you know, there's a lot more room to put other plants in there. Yeah, so here's the ones we put here, and these are actually some of my favorite this year. These are called Clowning Around. They had such a beautiful like pink coral look to them, and they've really been some of the favorite this year. The ones Ambrose just took out, those are called, if I'm correct, Explosion. Yep. Caladiums, and these two are actually, they were just introduced this year out there. Yes. In garden centers. So I'm gonna go ahead and see. I think that's all we have planted in there. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. The are just bigger right after I brought them out.
All right, so we've gone around and collected all of our bulbs, or most of the bulbs from the ground, because we're still looking. That was the whole reason for the
It's like a whole
for the
Easter
blower.
egg hunt.
So we still need to collect a couple that are in the ground here, but these are pretty much all the bulbs that we collected from outside and in the ground. As you can see, some of them have doubled in size. They're absolutely amazing. And then some
They're
still have the
big.
foliage. Most of you guys are gonna pull them out when you still have foliage on there. Angie has one here in a pot. One thing I do want to talk about is caladiums that are in a container. You can actually leave those in a container and just store them in a garage, or some places it's going to be 50 to 60 degrees. That way they'll maintain and not dry out too much. You do want to keep them in the soil and keep it a little bit moist so the bulbs don't completely dry out, but they also don't rot with a lot of moisture. So you can definitely do that. Leave them in the garage somewhere that's dark and dry, 50 to 60 degrees, and they'll be fine in the container. But these, we're gonna pull these out of the container and save them just like we are the ones that were in the ground as well.
The reason we do it is because it gets way too cold for us in the garage. The
And
garage is not...
It's not insulated, so this garage is definitely gonna get cold. And we also don't wanna have an abundant amount of plants just sitting in the garage that we're trying to overwinter as well. This one here is Flatter Me, right?
Flatter Me, yes.
So look how much that one has doubled. Absolutely amazing, and they'll continue to get bigger and bigger, and you can separate these bulbs. As you can see, I'm going to show you real quick. There's a little bit of that color right there. If you can see that, that's from a split in the bulb right there.
I'm trying to look for there it is. If you can pass me that right there. So I'm just separating them into different pots so I know who is who. Okay, and I just removed, you don't need to be removing anything from it, but I'm removing a little bit of the soil.
Yep, so that
off them.
That goes into the next process of how to save these bulbs for next year. So one thing you do want to do is if you get the bulb already like this with no foliage or nothing, leave it like that. But if you also pull out one that has this here, leave it like that as well. I recommend just leaving it that way. What you want to do is you also want to store these in a dark, dry place, again, anywhere 50 to 60 degrees, and you want to actually let them dry for about 2 to 3 weeks. I know it sounds like a lot of time, but that's going to let those bulbs cure perfectly for storage over winter. And the way you want to store those as well, I do recommend, is using this right here. This is sawdust. Now, when you order some bulbs, you're more than likely going to get them in something like this. Sawdust is probably the best thing to use to store these bulbs because it won't let them dry out too much, but also keep the right amount of moisture in these bulbs. The other thing I would recommend is possibly using some sand. You can use some sand as well. Now, because we have 3 different bulbs, you want to get 3 different containers to go ahead and store these in. I prefer cardboard. I wouldn't recommend plastic because plastic's going to trap moisture as well, and it can rot those bulbs. So I recommend a paper bag or a cardboard box to do that.
And we will have them in a closet inside the house. That's where it's dry place, and it's just the right temperatures that you mentioned right now, and there's where they're going to stay.
Yep, so again, what you want to do is you want to let these sit for 2 to 3 weeks in a temperature of 50 to 60 degrees in a dark area. Let them cure completely for 2 to 3 weeks. If you start seeing them at 2 weeks start to look nice and dry and cured, then you can just dust off the soil that's on there. And then you want to put those into sawdust or sand and save them till next year. And then when spring pops right around, you can go ahead and plant those back in the container or right back in the ground. And one thing I do want to note is because we don't have 2 to 3 weeks to do this, once these completely dry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of white paint, maybe some latex paint, just like when we got these bulbs, and mark it where these started shooting up. So that way, when it comes to planting them, you put them in there the same way so they just have no trouble coming right back up. But you got anything else to add?
No, that's it. I'm just very, you did talk about how beautiful they are, right?
Oh, yes.
There's so many new varieties out there, guys. So just go ahead and keep an eye out for, I think every year there's something new out there. They actually look huge, like big. They remind me of elephant ears. That's how nice they are nowadays.
Yes.
But with a lot more color.
Yep, so that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you learned something here. If you did like this video, give it a like. Subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you guys in the next video.